She holds back tears and then walks off the camera. I mean, not much more than that. Alright, top left of Romanicide for the start of the grand finals. We have Cure. In the bottom right as the red Terran, it is Soul. Naruto thinks Roddy knows anything about being referee. He's in for a bad time. Hopefully we'll never need a referee. So Cure, he already defeated EU Terran in this series.
Thank you for appeasing the overmind.
In this tournament. Proved how good he was in TvT, did lose a game. And I think this is going to be a similar situation where, although it is cross-server, I don't think this mirror matchup is as cruel as PvP, which has been a problem for Zest and a problem for Hero. So I think Cure is going to lose a couple of games, but overall take the series. Thank you, Baiter, for the 14-month resub. It is Romanicide, so while they're not going to be risking it for a 1-Rax expand, I think they're going to see at least one of these guys try and put an on-location command center out their third. That's usually what we see anyways. Factory expand for both of them, start things off nice and safe. Cure might start off every TvT series with his 5 Reaper play and his 3 Hellions, so we'll know for sure if we see that Hellion come out. This is a posture corrector. I understand it's fascinating and not something that people immediately think of, but boy, do I get tired of repeating myself. You know what? In first person I asked today, I can't complain too much. We actually have Soul doing the same thing, funnily enough. So Cure did end up going for a lot of Reapers and a lot of Hellions, but Soul is doing the exact same thing. Now, Cure is studied by a lot of the other Terrans. Thermal is talking about studying Cure, and I'm sure Soul has also studied him. And he might study him and steal some builds and use them against him. He might also have studied him enough of the online play to realize that he does this and is trying to beat him at his own game. A dangerous thing to do. Not quite, actually. You know what? Soul only went up to 3 Reaper, 2 Hellion. So not quite what Cure was doing. This is the more typical aggressive build, and Soul is going to be outpowered. He's going to be outgunned. This is exactly what Cure would love to have happen. He only loses 1 Reaper in the process. Although 2 get weak, they're going to be recovering up health. And Soul is in for a lot of trouble. He actually played right into Cure's hands. Had he continued building his own units, you know, maybe he doesn't even commit, and they both kind of awkwardly have a bunch of units. But now, oh, the Widowmine finally does get a shot, which means the Reapers that were going to support this aren't here. 4 Reapers would have been a very different story to 2. So thankfully, the Widowmine finally got a shot, right? But anyways, Cure is going to be able to take a slight lead in this game. The counterattack wasn't as deadly as it could have been. Cure tried to go for the headbutt, didn't quite work out. Could have instead sent Reapers up into the main base and gotten a few more SCV kills. So I do think it's a bit of an opportunity missed, but I totally get why he did it. Had the Widowmine not hit, had he actually successfully ran past it with every single unit, those 4 remaining Reapers might have done the trick as far as killing a bunch of SCVs goes. But instead, no SCVs were lost. Ooh, one of mine tries to get dragged into the army, but Soul, their microdator just got lucky. Medivac also trying to be microed, but it was very weak. That entirely gets cleaned up. And Pure, having taken not actually a lead, now definitely takes a lead in the army supply. Here's got 2 ravens already to Soul's simple single raven. How did that happen? How did that happen? I'm actually both confused how I got 2 ravens so quickly, but there they are. One raven gets shot down by Soul, and the other one's not gonna have a very good time. So far, Soul doing wonderfully on the defensive side of things. They both are doing great on the defensive side of things. Whoever attacks has not been getting the benefit. Soul holds on to a slight worker lead. Neither one of them capable of doing that on-location command center, because it actually wasn't as passive of a TvT as it could be. Scan on top of the production of Cure. Sees the 3rd CC timing, sees that it is in fact bio, which can be a question. You know, we've seen a little more mech lately. Not necessarily from TvT in general. Special likes to do it occasionally. Innovation did it a couple times. Don't think he does it totally often. So it is worth checking that out, I guess. But perhaps more importantly, the 3rd CC, the barracks timings, and if the starport was swapped off or not to produce Vikings, which it was. So Soul is going to have very similar things here, but he does have faster 1-1 upgrades, slower stim, and faster 4th and 5th barracks. So slight differences every which way we look. Here is holding on to a bigger army supply with a better upgrade stim, finishing up. But he doesn't really have enough Marines to make that stim really scary. And 6 army supply is totally negated by good tank positioning. So I think I like Soul's position better. He's not gonna siege that tank. And then siege all his tanks first, redirect it. Loses a Raven without quite getting his opponents, but he tries the target fire, he misses, there's the target fire. Now it's Soul who is the Raven, and Cure is down to 0, but Cure, he has the Viking, 6-2. And that does put a lot of power behind this. The Viking lead is big. Soul is forced to repair. That's half of his SCVs not mining, but his production is a little bit faster. His stim is also finished up. He can get a nice concave on top of these tanks, and Cure, I'm not sure. Yeah, I think you land here. Oh, the auto turret actually doing something. The interference matrix as well. And the Vikings don't land, which I think is the right choice. But no, there's a lot of Marines. They do land on the high ground to take out a supply depot and a couple SCVs, and that is cute, but now it looks like they're gonna die. So not... Either way, they didn't do a whole lot extra. That's, eh. Soul is going to be able to get back to mining. Start his own 4th TC around the same time. Unfortunately, he has lost his upgrade lead. And in fact, I think he's just... Oh no, he did already get an armory. Okay, well, if he remembers to get 2-2, he can still get it faster, but Cure certainly has caught up. And now Cure hitting this 3rd base again with a Marine drop. Perfectly timed. Soul was already moving out, so he goes into the 3rd, gets a couple of kills, goes into the main. Now Soul is forced to go all the way back home into his literal main, which means Cure hopefully gets another attack somewhere else, or simply just doesn't have to worry about an attack. Grabs a couple of Soul's last Vikings, and that means that he could actually just leave. There you go. Two starts at the same time for both players, so that is unfortunate for Soul. Had he kept a 30-second 2-2 lead, I'd still be like, yeah, that's gonna be a very big deal. Now with similar upgrades, now we just talk about the fact that Cure is up 7 workers, even army supply. He does have less tanks. He gave away more tanks with that engagement, but ooh, this is actually going to be kind of a concave. I'm not sure about this. Cure might have bitten off more than he could chew. Yeah, a little bit. Oh, Soul doesn't have any medevacs to pick up, though. So not going to be able to take out these last few tanks. It was a bit of a wash, wasn't it? They started out with an even army supply, and they ended with pretty even army supply. The reason I was uncertain about for Cure is because he had so much army that was still lagging behind. And the army off to the left that kind of created that concave wasn't a lot. But Soul also had to push into a choke. So that was always going to be a bit difficult to do. Cure has been probably more so aiming towards stopping his 4th base. And it looks like he'll still have his tanks sieged up, but there's the drop that was missing from earlier on top of the tanks to hopefully dislodge Cure once and for all. I think Soul had a couple of Liberators killing 7 SCVs too, but that's not so important. What's so important is that Cure gets pushed back. Single tank is hammering away at this planetary. It's got dreams, man. It's got dreams. There you go. There's the save. There's the pickup. There's the leave. And Soul can feel a little bit better about pushing away that army. Because if it was reinforced, if his planetary was still under fire and then suddenly it was under fire by 5, 6 tanks, that's a problem. The Cure is pushed back. He's on double star or factory production, but Soul is now adding on double starport, moving on into the later stages of a TvT. I'm actually surprised that Cure is not doing the same thing. Cure is getting into a fast 5th command center, dealing with this little drop, no problem, but he is going to start losing out on the air war, which is the next step of TvT. It's where you're supposed to go into. Unless I miss all the starports. Nope, just went up to 8 barracks. So very, very purposefully going into more barracks rather than going into more starport. It is going to give him a much more mobile army, but when he gets pushed, he will have a very tough time dislodging it. This was clever. Looked like he's going to go into the main, kind of paused and went, wait a minute, why don't I just take out these tanks? Takes out the Liberators as well, and we'll be able to leave with a good chunk of Marines left over by the looks of things. And again, he has forced Soul to go all the way back home, meaning that the one worst thing here for Cure is if he's forced to retreat back to his 4th, and then Soul comes in with Vikings and Liberators and tanks. Like, Cure can't dislodge that with just Marines through a choke into 17 tanks. But if Cure holds on to the map control and always finds Soul out of position or not altogether, then of course he can start taking really good engagements, and Soul's attempted Viking, Liberator, Raven, whatever transition is going to be minerals that are caught up in something that's not helpful right now. And now that Soul has been found entirely out of position, this is so bad for him. So absolutely bad. I think this might be it. Soul's down 40 supply anyways. A little bit later to the expansions and then investing into all the starports. And on top of that, Cure gets on his side of the map much faster. Now Soul is going to recognize the base trade when he sees it. He's going to try and do something. He does take out that command center, but Cure is already marching up into the main base. 2 tanks are going to try and siege, but it's too late. The Marines are already there, but heavily weakened by a couple of stims, and they are forced to retreat back to that low ground, so Cure will not be breaking Soul's production. What can that be said for Cure, I guess? Soul is dropping all of his Marines first, and it looks like that'll be good enough. Now the tanks come forward, and Cure's production is the one that ends up camped, despite him getting across the map so much faster. This is a big problem. He's got 3 tanks on the high ground as Cure awkwardly tries to attack from the low ground and then kind of leaving his units on the high ground. Soul might have found his ticket into this game. He might have found the biggest weakness of Cure, which, biggest weakness of any Terran actually, is the production. Now, Cure is still mining off of 3 bases, where Soul is down to just 1 base mining, as his planetary is under fire. That will go down, so it's economy versus production versus the army. Now that Cure's army is all on the high ground with the widest possible concave, I think Cure's got enough. Soul takes out a tank, but then what about the overwhelming number of Marines? Even though some of them are weak, only 3 tanks, can't fire at all of them at once. If they were healthy Marines, that would have gone so much better. The fact that it was kind of close, mostly because the Marines were injured. Soul is going to be able to push away these tanks. I don't know if Cure can save them. Saves 3 of them anyways. Kira holds on to 2 factories, 2 barracks, and a starport, and is starting to rebuild his barracks. As he does get his last few tanks taken out. The army supplies have evened up, but Kira managed to fit in +3 attack before it was done. Marines might not be what determines this game, though. Funnily enough. Sol knows he's on a timer. He doesn't have any mining. He's lifting his main. That's his last command center. So he needs to get across the map as soon as possible, but his entire army is siege-based. You can't go quickly with this type of army. So as strong as it could be, it's just going to take too long. Kira's going to be able to build up a lot more Marines, a lot more tanks. I mean, he could have even tried going for his own Vikings. But he's just going to build up the medevac count. We're watching a very slow death that's concealing itself as a push. This is like those moments before death when someone gets like a lot of energy. That's a thing, right? A minute ago, the army supplies were even. Now 30 army supply lead for Kira with the upgrade lead, with the production. Again, he could have gone into his own Vikings and maybe made this a bit easier. Would have already killed all the Liberators. But he's also just... He's waiting this out, he's buying time, and ultimately he's going to be baiting Sol into this area. Because as long as Sol has these chokes on his side, then yeah, I guess his army's pretty good. But once he's got to go into a concave, it's not going to be one. Kira has a couple of options. Could try and go for the surround, could try and go for another base trade, which would favor him. I think either option works. Like, anything works here for Kira. He's got so many units. It's so much time. And Sol, he already knew he was on a timer. He's on even more of a timer. Just gonna tap out. GG. Still a pretty good, cool game overall. I don't know if the admin's making the lobby. I guess. All right, game number 2 on Oxide. Secure might be the first Korean to win the European Cup. Am I correct about that? I know Solar tried, but he wasn't able to do it, right? The bottom left up one, he is Cure. In the top right, we have Sol. Sol, a very good Terran, who doesn't make it to the finals very often. He oftentimes gets stopped by, you know, one of the big three, I suppose. Which, starting to lose some of its, what's the word, razzle-dazzle? Raynor and Cyril don't play in these open cups very frequently in the first place, so he doesn't have to worry about them. And then Clem is temporarily losing his place in the top three. He got defeated by Mana today, and he has not done very well in the past, like, 5 open cups. He's actually even skipped a couple at this point. So, oftentimes he gets beat by Clem, or he gets beat by Hero Marine. And then he's still not so good that he doesn't die to the people he's not supposed to, you know what I mean? Or he does die. Wait, yes. You know what? I confused myself with that one. He still gets taken down by people who aren't supposed to, quote-unquote, kill him. I don't think Sol's ever reached a place where I look at his games and I'm like, 100% this guy wins. It's actually very difficult for me to be 100% Sol 2-0 someone. Even some of the, you know, not to be mean, but some of the stragglers of the DreamHack groups, some of the guys who get in by the skin of their teeth and bomb out in the group 08. I don't want to mention names because then that'd be mean. But you know what I'm talking about. Even against that, I'd always give them a chance to defeat Sol, just because Sol, despite being solid in gameplay, he's not particularly prone to going to extremes and opening up weaknesses that way. He just doesn't always bring that level of consistency. He'll have a couple of wacky games. Anyways, he does always have a chance to make it into the finals of an open cup, but he just very rarely does so. He'll get to the semifinals decently, enough times. Finals, not his first, but winning them doesn't happen too frequently. That is a good news. One Reaper goes down, but Cure, not the type to play so greedy that he skips the second one, is gonna not win this one either. Uh-oh. That might be the pinging effect there. Third Reaper is on the way. Tech Lab was added because I think he hoped he wouldn't have to build a Hellion. So this is extremely awkward. Cure was probably planning on 2 Reaper right into Cyclone, and instead had to go into 3 Reaper Hellion. Like, this is not ideal for him at all. His command center has been continuously delayed. Sol gets a fantastic start, and I gotta chalk up the Reaper micro to ping. I just gotta. I don't think Cure might lose the first one, because that happens to everyone, but I don't think Cure loses the second Reaper battle as hardcore as he did. That just was very odd. The tournament gateway, the tournament gatekeeper. I like that description of Cure. I kind of joke about that with Hero Marine. I would want to say that Sol has his best chance in this tournament cross-server, but Cure really hasn't shown a lot of weakness in that regard. PvP seems to still be very dependent on that, so we see the other Koreans knocked out, but Cure is doing totally fine. Aside from that one little Reaper problem, he's doing totally fine. Sol is going to go for the medevac drop that is still somewhat popular on Oxide. Kind of seems to be coming back. I feel like it was really popular for 2 months, then it died. Now it's back again. But it is going to be happening. And Cure, pretty much what you do against this is have your units in the right position. It's funny to think that when this was first done, I actually saw Terrans die to it. But now, Terran's a little bit wiser to the situation. Just have the unit in position. So, kind of in expectation of that, the guy doing the drop might hit someplace unorthodox. Like, right up the gut. Right into the natural. So the Reaper and the tank were totally anticipating it hitting here to abuse the low ground, high ground. Now we're out of position to deal with it over here. Over here, there's not as much cleverness or potential, and actually Soul's tank not going to be saved. As Kier is able to just get on the very edge, and take that out. But Soul does do some damage. He gets a 6-worker lead. Just because of the lateness of the command center. I mean, the Reaper micro really did go poorly for Kier. But his tank drop wasn't as effective as he was hoping for. Because what I was saying was that your tank's no longer in a very safe location. Like, SEVs could have been pulled, Marines get a concave on it. Whereas here, it can kind of abuse its positioning more. But regardless, Kier cleans it up. Soul gets to say that he did something with it, but it was ultimately forced to retreat. And now the best thing is that, probably still from the earlier portion of the game, which is that he did so much damage on the command center. Kier's counterattack is quite feisty. Kier has more tanks than his opponent. Soul's like going to try and come in from behind. Kier kind of anticipates this and sends some units to go scout it. This is not only to scout in general, but also to get your tanks with vision. So if your tanks don't see this tank coming up here, get siege, it's a problem. Ooh, the Raven of Kier just went down to the Cyclone. It had used most of its energy, but it's a unit that you always want to keep alive. Reapers provide the high ground vision, but not long enough to get the second tank. Interference Matrix come down on one of Kier's tanks, and that is going to be a cleanup. Kier, though, took the opportunity during the push. As long as it did last, he did get a 3rd CC on location finished, which should give him that little economic boost to bring him back into the game, because he's still down by 6 workers. But a 3rd on location, that's big. That's probably 6 workers big. Like, on the dot. That's what I would guess. Make up for it. I don't know what that was. I guess it was a barracks. Oh, he accidentally made 4 barracks when he already had 2. Yeah. By the way, he already had 2. So, he didn't swap, I mean, I didn't really get to go over this, I guess, but he didn't swap his starport onto the reactor. He just went for a faster 2nd barracks. So that gave him a few more Marines to work with, I guess, in the early game. Less Vikings, though, and that means that Kier is going to have the Viking lead. Soul was pretty quick to slapping down his own command center. So Kier never really got to catch up, but eventually it'll all be even as they both saturate. Upgrades are faster for Soul. Production... Wait, why is he building a 6th barracks again? Did he think he miscounted? Wait, what's going on? Wait, what? That's weird. So Soul adds on a 6th, cancels it. Then he adds another tech lab. So 2 tech labs in total, which you're really not supposed to do. Only if it's against mech, or if you're like really far behind and need to catch up on upgrades. And then he does add a 6th barracks. Interesting. So ultimately he has the same number of Marines producing, but he invested 150 more minerals into it. Huh. It seems very purposeful, right? So, oh, that's interesting. Soul doesn't have quite enough units to do this break, I think. 3 tanks are interference matrix, but there's still 2 tanks firing. Kier's Marines were also kind of tucked away behind the tanks and came forward when necessary. Vikings now land on top of unguarded tanks as the Marine numbers are just too low, and Soul, all of a sudden, finding himself in a very dangerous position. His upgrades didn't help him there, unfortunately. And now Kier has 4 tanks, a bunch of Vikings shooting after that Natcher, the 3rd CC. Marines do take out a ton of the Vikings. Don't quite grab that last weak one, but I'm not sure taking out all the Vikings would have been enough anyways. Maybe he was thinking, take out the Vikings, use my Liberator, but his Liberator is doing nothing. Kier didn't take the 3rd that location. And Liberator, I don't know if it actually would have been enough either. It's would I don't know if I can judge his choice to kill those Vikings. At least they were killable. At least they were weak. That means that all 4 tanks are still alive, healthy, and hitting the production of the main at this point. 4 tanks, not really protected though. Soul could try and jump on top of him, which is exactly what he's doing. Little bits of micro here and there. Deflecting the Marine drop of the main with reinforcements as well, and Cure does a pretty bang-up job of actually holding on to that. The entire time, though, he's been down in workers with the 3rd CC not mining, and Cure has been happily mining once he's dealt with the Liberator anyways. Still has a decent number of Marines protect his tanks. One was focus fired, but not even quite killed. And that is it. Kira will go up 2-0. And that was Soul's best opener so far. The first game, he actually got kind of a poor opener, and it was a bit weird, but I don't think you can argue that second game, that was Soul's beginning. He had a huge lead, but lost it in the engagements. There's a cat up there. I bet you guys can't see that. She kind of blends in with the curtain. Nug nug. Nugget. I'm a poker. Shouldn't appreciate that. What's idle time? Does anyone know? Are you asking what that means? Or are you asking what the idle time was? I don't know what it was, but what it means is workers not working. No, I put hand lotion and it all came out. Shit. Came out in a big blob. That's not nice. That's not fair. Ugh, what a waste. Alright. Top right of 2,000 atmospheres is Cure. And in the bottom left down 2, he is Soul. Soul not looking like he's going to be winning this best of 5. He doesn't look totally outclassed. But I think where it matters most, he is still a bit outclassed. It's not really like the macro differences that are very evident. It's not necessarily the micro differences. In fact, Soul won the micro war last game. That is to say, the actual, like, intense one Reaper micro, right? But as far as the engagements go, I think that he's shown worse engagements. He's lost in the engagements. And that is a type of macro, right? That's spreading out your units, focus firing tanks, shooting in the right direction, auto turrets coming down. Sure. But he's not necessarily making the right moves with all of it. In that last game specifically, he overestimated his potential and tried to break Cure, when Cure was actually not breakable. And then he's also lost, I guess, in the expectations of a TvT? I don't know how else to put it. The first game was him getting out-positioned. Not due to anything so specific that I say, like, well, Soul's just worse at it. I mean, it was a bit of unluckiness, I suppose. But still, Cure seemed to have a handle on what he wanted to do, what his goals were, and Soul seems to be kind of doing a lot of the, as expected Terran versus Terran things. Like that first game, he went into a bunch of extra starports, maybe didn't realize that Cure was actually investing more into barracks, more mobile looking kind of for a base trade. He was maybe a bit punished for that. As I said, he's not outclassed, but he is losing. Cure is better than him, especially when it comes to those engagements. It's very important in TvT. I think, honestly, when it comes to the pros, it is a lot of the engagements making or breaking TvTers. Are they good at taking engagements? No? Okay, well, they're gonna have a bad time at TvT. I feel like there's something about TvZ that has top Terrans understand it, even if they can't execute it. But TvT engagements can still look like people are wrapping their heads around it. I mean, that was Clem's weakness, I think, for a long time with his TvT. He just didn't seem to really get his priorities right. I don't know if Soul's got quite the same hang-up, but it is one of the issues in this particular series. He deals with Cure's little Reaper scouts / aggression. Cure even tried to be clever and bring the second one back a little bit later. But at least Cure did still get a full scout. Sees actually nothing of notes. Now, if he had gone back in, maybe confirming the Starport Tech Lab would have been better, but it really is nothing of note. It's a very typical TvT opener. Cure has gone into his own pretty typical version, though he did go for 2 Cyclones. Might be anticipating a drop if he thinks this won't add a tech lab. So yeah, second Reaper comes back a little bit later and he sees the tech lab. He's probably not positioning himself like this. He might be trying to intercept the Raven, but I would say very rarely does a Raven go through this direction. So yeah. Is each chat full of possible serial killers? I've always been aware of that. You gotta be careful about destroying Captain Crunch, because then it cuts up your roof of your mouth. I was watching a commercial yesterday, and it was like churro cereal. It was like, oh, I forget what the name of the cereal is. Cinnamon Toast? Yeah? But with churros. And I was watching it, and I even said out loud, like, man, whoever came up with the idea of sugar breakfast is a genius. At one point, breakfast was like hot breakfast, like, you know, eggs, bacon, whatever, toast. And there was like gruel, porridge, grits, oatmeal. And then someone was like, okay, this cold cereal you guys are making with like bran flakes and shit, add just like a fuck ton of sugar to that. I was like, genius. Anyways, that's bridge the gap between the boring setup of TvT and the actual push of TvT. Soul is playing a dangerous game. He's expanding on location. So dangerous because when it's building, you can't lift it. Once it's built, you can lift it. That's simple. So if he doesn't protect this from the get-go and loses that SCV, he's probably just going to lose the command center. This is really important. Soul, though, seems like he's going to do a perfectly good job perfect job defending it. He had the tanks, he had the Ravens, he had the Marines, and he moved them all into location to protect the command center. So Kira couldn't even get a, one tank shot on it. Nicely done. Kira's command center is not far behind as far as turning into an warpool. It's not going to be on location. Sol finds himself in another game where the start of it is actually pretty good for him. Maybe not as good as the Reaper last game, which delayed the command center a ton, gave him a 6-worker lead. But the third command center already being down is pretty good for him. And if he could get his counter to do something, that would be nice too. Raven slapped on auto turrets and interference matrix. Pure, though, went for all interference matrix, and that looks to be 10 times more effective. Sol left with just his 3 tanks, if that. 2 tanks, if that. Yeah, 2 tanks and a Raven. Pure left with 5 tanks, 3 Vikings, a Raven, and of course the control over his 3rd CC, which would have been in question otherwise. Kira has lost the slight SCV lead he had gained because of the 3rd CC being on location, but he now has a considerable army supply lead. His army supply is also very good. Army supply is 6 tanks to 2, 3 Vikings, so well now 4. Sol has a chance to hold on here. Looks like Kira's gonna go for the concave of tanks. Vikings of Sol do land to try and stop this from being game over, man. It looks like it might still be game over. It's actually really close. More Vikings of Kira land, and that will be taking care of the last tank, and that is probably game over, man. Sol's gonna hold on a little while longer, but during all of this holding on, he has not added on his additional barracks. He was a little bit later to that. He's not added on his 1-1 upgrade, so he's just really late to that. And it looks like it won't be a hold anyways. Kira actually rally pushing. Makes it work. GG. Kira takes the 3-0.